Well, hello, everyone. As promised, here is the accompanying lecture to the other section of let's see, it's chapter 10, and this one is on uh, the intersection of human services and school settings. So we're going to get started with this one. There's a few things to go through. And yes, as always, we'll highlight some test questions that will be there. There are several, as you can imagine. So let's go ahead and get started. Get all this set up and we will be good to go. All right, so when it comes to human services and school settings, as I said, they kind of intersect with each other. There are three main areas that you need to know about. And yes, this is on the test. So these three main areas are the school social worker, the school counselor, guidance counselor at a school, and also the school psychologist. These are three different roles. They have different areas that they focus upon to different extents, and we're going to address that just a little bit. So let's start with that first one with the school social worker. Now the place of the school social worker arose from the visiting teacher movement, and just a little background on that. The visiting teacher movement was used up to 1940. And that's where you would have like another teacher like come in, and there would be some support and some other things going on. But what they found out was that it was not enough, and they had to expand. There were a number of needs, challenges, and difficulties that children were facing. But what they also found out is that as they started looking at this, it wasn't just the difficulties that they were facing, but there were actually three main areas that came out. Number one was the influx of immigrants that came in, particularly after World War II. And then also, as the need for compulsory education came into place, which was, you could no longer stay home and work on the farm. Your child had to have some sort of schooling, at least up to a certain level. And then also mass urbanization, the move from rural areas to cities. And we see how this is affected in many areas. The mass urbanization, where there were more jobs in cities, so people left some rural areas. And then following that, they also had consolidation, where instead of having like your one-room schoolhouse that might have several grades in it, they would build a school and they would bus children in from across the counties. That meant that the smaller schools that were in certain areas, certain towns, they would then close. And then what happened is they found out that gentrification would move in. Basically, that other people would move out, and then so they would find out that the town would slowly die off as properties were abandoned and things like that. So this whole thing kind of happened. It just kind of morphed and grew. But in all this, the needs to address or the needs that some of the children were facing and the need to address that also grew as well. So enter the school social worker. Now, as I showed a little bit earlier, there's also the average pay that I put in here. Talk about the average pay for a few of these positions as well. The school social worker has a couple of different functions. Number one is they'll address those psychosocial barriers to learning and academic achievement. So there's whether that's some physical barriers that the child is experiencing, whether there's some cognitive barriers that they have. So there may be developmental delay that's going on, or some other issues that are going on that are interrupting a child's ability to learn. Also some behavioral issues, and there's a multitude of reasons why there may be behavioral issues, and this could stem from a host of things. It may be some things going on in the home. It may be even that there are some medical issues that might need that might need addressed. But these are the sorts of things that uh, school social workers do focus on. There are a couple other areas that kind of fall into their wheelhouse. Number one is case management, of course, because they will have a caseload. They'll have students that they're looking in on and all of that. So case management is part of it. And then also the family liaison. So the school social worker can provide that link between the school, also area services, but also dealing with the family itself. So they can be advocate for the student, or maybe speaking to a family situation when it comes to services and the like. So the school social worker will do all of these things. One thing that is a little bit separate is that they're going to be very aware of community factors. So stats on things like drugs, gangs, crime, all of these things that will affect your community. They're going to be aware of all of that, especially when it comes to places and ways, means to get help. There's also a big difference between the types of things that a school social worker will face in a rural area as opposed to an urban area. There's a big difference, not only in some of the issues, but actually mostly in the form of services, available services, how quickly things can move. Now, next is school counselor. I know we all remember school guidance counselor from school. And so the guidance counselor is going to address a number of things as well. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Let me go back just a second to the school social worker in some of the things that they will be involved with. I'm sorry. I do have some stats and some things for Wayne County itself. So, like, if you're a school social worker here, some things that you would want to be aware of is the Indiana Youth Survey. It was a massive survey that was done in 2017 that was initiated here, and it showed a real need for youth prevention programs of all sorts. So the survey went out to a number of different youth, and it was asking questions like, in the past 30 days, um, what has been your interaction, or have you had any action with alcohol or marijuana, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think that's a big issue in our area? Those sorts of things. But the findings from it actually showed that if we look at eighth graders in Wayne County, 21% of eighth graders and 23% of ninth graders, and then all the way up to 32% of 12th graders had used alcohol within the past 30 days, had reported using alcohol within the past 30 days. And then once you get to marijuana, you also have some numbers there with 18% of the eighth graders all the way up to 23% of 11th graders and 26% of 12th graders reported that they had used marijuana in the past 30 days. This is significant in the fact that you're talking about some gateway drugs and then access to some of these drugs as well. So these are things that the school social worker would be very aware of, and then in their casework want to be very aware that a full 25 to 35% of their caseload could be directly affected by this, and living in an area where these things, where alcohol is at this point, depending on what grade you're looking at, alcohol may be a bigger issue than marijuana. So these are the kinds of stats and things that the school social worker will get into. On to the school guidance counselor. The pay rate on this, I believe the average in Indiana is about 56,000. Their focus is on providing safe and effective learning environments. Which means they're going to, in order to communicate well, they're going to be culturally relevant to their area. But that's just like a small part of what they do. It's school guidance counselors are almost a catch-all for everything. They do a lot of they not only will talk with students about some common everyday problems, but they really serve as front lines for referral in a lot of instances. And then that's not even counting all the case conferences that they'll go to, all the scheduling that they have to do, and then tracking with students in their caseload to make sure that students are on track to graduate as the requirements to graduate get more and more broad with a number of different details in the mix there. Uh, the certain number of buckets that you have to fill in order to graduate. There are certain requirements that you have to do. This changes. Some of these things are changing every couple of years, so they have to keep up on all of these things. Case conferences, IEPs, all of these sorts of things. With a big emphasis on school counseling came with the No Child Left Behind Act, the No Child Left Behind Act, which represented a shift in education to standard based, and it gave some control to states. So there was a lot of emphasis on this. So different states are handling it in different ways, putting different emphasis on this role. In Indiana, um, as I said, there's the academic portion of it and the social development as they're talking with students. But in Indiana, right now there's a big push for uh, school personnel to enhance the career development portion of it. And this could be things like career centers and things like that. But really, what they're looking for is for guidance counselors, teachers, anyone that can effectively communicate with students. They want to be able to discern early what areas a student is interested in, so that they can get them started in pathways, whether that is vocational technical trade training, or opening them up to some new possibilities. And this may be in a number of areas. This may be a business class. This may be um, even things such as human services and social work type classes. These things are out there, and they want to do this for students because the workforce has really been gutted, particularly in Indiana, for a number of reasons, and they want to have more trained workers earlier. There is a demand, and unfortunately, the supply cannot meet that. So the idea is to go ahead and get students interested in this early, so that you get some that are coming out and they're 18 and they don't want to spin their wheels, but they know exactly what they want to do, and they have received some training so they can start in at entry level or maybe even a little bit higher in some areas. So this could be like I said, anything from some of your traditional trades classes like automotive and machine tool, construction and things like that, on up to even talking about business, computer coding, and things of that nature. It's really good for the kids in many ways because it allows them to try many things. It can be really also frustrating for both students and administrators because uh, it does tend to put an emphasis on kids to decide in the moment. There's that whole buildup and all of that angst that's going on, feeling pressured to decide in a moment. One thing that I found is that when dealing with students, particularly younger students who are not sure what way they want to go, simply because they may not know all the different areas out there, particularly some younger students, whether it's high school age or younger, is to start talking about, if it's high school and they're getting ready to graduate, you can say, hey, what do you want to do for the next couple of years to, maybe put a roof over your head and, maybe get your own apartment, or how about to get that, that new truck that you're wanting. Shifting the focus like that, shifting the language like that to say, just for the next couple of years, automatically, you can see their shoulders kind of relax right there, because they're no longer thinking, I have to choose this and I'm in this for the rest of my life. That does put a lot of pressure on kids. So simply shifting the language can help. Another thing that can help is, in conversation with students, is to look at some of the aptitudes that they have. They can take a lot of tests and things like that. And that's all well and good, but you can also narrow it down to a few things. If they are really relationally oriented, really want to help people in some ways, well, that falls into the helping professions. Okay. And when it comes to the helping professions, you have things like health and human services, you have things such as education. These sorts uh, of careers will require certain skill sets. And so what you start doing is looking for those things in that student. And then if there's the opportunity for them to take some classes like that to where they can either close the door or open the door by judging their interest, it becomes actually really beneficial for them. And yes, these things are on the test. Now, my favorite, uh, guidance counselors also handle IEPs. And so I figured, what is the best way to remember IEP? Well, obviously with OPP. I don't know. It just makes sense in my head. Maybe it doesn't for you. That's okay. IEP means individualized education plan. And this means that when a student has a disability, delay, or something identified, then by law, the school must develop a program to accommodate that. Now, remember, this is for K-12. This is not for colleges. We'll get to that in just a minute. IEPs and things like 504 plans, 504 meaning a behavioral plan, these plans do not carry over to college. They are useful at colleges, but you must remember college is voluntary, and implementation on a large scale like K-12 does, I mean, that would really drive up the cost of tuition for many colleges. However, colleges also want to be able to compete, and they can't discriminate. So colleges do offer accommodations, but what you will find is that it will vary from place to place. So um, that is to say that when you are counseling with someone else, or you might be talking to that student who is talking about a career or college choice, and one of the things to talk about is to realize that college and high school, very, very different. Not only the expectations of the work and everything else, but uh, the IEP and the support that you would find in high school is going to look very, very different in college. And so a person must learn this number one thing, which is to advocate for themselves. That's one of the best skills that you can instill in a younger person. There's also the fact that in college, this becomes more along the lines of faculty and academic advising, where someone is looking at multiple facets of their life and how this would interact with certain areas in a person's life as well, and how does it affect on their academics. School psychologists, which I don't know, I always just picture looking like Jack Black, right? I don't know. School psychologists, they're going to be looking at several different areas here. You can find all of these in your book, and I encourage you to go through those. But as I mentioned them here, I mean, some of these are going to be some test questions. So even if you go through and mark those areas in your book, I highly recommend doing that. School psychologists will be more well versed in restraint and seclusion methods when needed in certain instances. Also with student learning, just the ways that people learn. So um, this will be beyond like normal, just your normal learning patterns that we might talk about. So we might talk about how someone is a visual learner or a audio learner, or maybe they are what's called a kinesthetic learner. So maybe they have to write or tap a pen or something like that uh, when they're listening to a lecture or watching a video or interacting in class, and then that's what helps it stick to them better. The thing is, it goes beyond just those methods of learning and cognition, and they might look into actually doing up certain things and certain plans to help students with academic, social, and emotional success. And they'll want to touch several different ways. So they might do certain certain bits of testing or implement different programs that's going to increase student motivation. That's really going to come alongside those IEPs, and that's one thing that that they do specialize in it is the IEP itself, and then make programs to implement sometimes for that specific student alone. They're more likely to have a smaller caseload, but for it also to be sometimes rather intense. It kind of depends on their situation. So that's the third role, the school psychologist. One thing that is that's really big in schools right now, as I'm sure you all know, is the factor of bullying. Your book does mention this a little bit. I do encourage you to think of a few of a few questions, and those questions would be, what is bias-based bullying? Why do you think girls are bullied more often than boys? What can student support personnel do to affect bullying? How can they intervene in instances of cyberbullying? These are all conversations that are going on right now and have gone on for a while, but it pays you to also start thinking of these things and getting in that mindset, because this is another area and indeed a growing area where there is need of more and more employment. Also, finally, what kind of student-based efforts can be galvanized to make a difference? This is really important because it gets students invested and student involvement. Student-based efforts can be really effective, but there's a host of things to look into there. One thing I would put out there to you is when it comes to cyberbullying, there are lines of legality that happen. So there's all sorts of things to look into there, and these are basically discussions that are relevant today and are going to continue to be more and more relevant in our culture. So that's all I have for you now. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. I know we always think of the best questions 24 hours later. That's okay. Just go ahead and send me a message and I will get back with you. I will put out an announcement, but you'll have the study guide for this exam that will be released, and that should be out by now. And I encourage you to go through that again, as with the other study guides. Go through it, after each question or everything. Fill in everything that you know. Mark book pages that have to do with that, so that you can easily refer to them. The next test, I believe the time limit is around 80 minutes or so, 85 minutes. And it's in the same sort of format that the others have been in. All right, so as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thanks a lot.